I'm proud to serve as California State Superintendent of Public Instruction. I'd like to welcome you to the first ever webinar on distance learning innovations for special education. We know that the impacts to our education system due to COVID-19 have been significant. We've never experienced a challenge like this. We've got to ensure that our students are safe, and that means that distance learning is the order of the day. It means that social distancing is required. Our students cannot be on campuses because it is not safe for them to be there. But while our campuses may be closed to students, our schools are not closed. And we have to continue to provide our students with access to a great education. And we're doing that through distance learning, including through the delivery of special education. We know that that is not an easy task. And so we put this webinar together to support our educators on how we provide special education through distance learning. We want to thank all of the educators from across the state, teachers and administrators and parents and others who sent in ideas to our email address on innovations in special education. I want to thank our special education division here at the California Department of Education, led by Kristen Wright, who you'll hear from shortly, who's helped to put today together. I want to thank the members of our special education work group, more than 150 educators who are working together to help us to provide examples and practical examples of lesson plans and activities and how we deliver special education for our California students. Consider today a beginning, a first of many conversations that we have together about how we deliver special education through distance learning. And so we invite you to continue to share your ideas. We thank those panelists that you'll hear from today, our teachers, our work group members, our staff from the Division of Special Education. We have much work to do, but we can do it together. We are facing a challenge that we've never seen before. But as it relates to educating our students, we must rise to that challenge and do more together for all of our students. Thanks for joining our webinar, and we look forward to the great work that we do together. I'm going to turn it over to Kristen Wright, our Special Education Division Director, who'll take us from here to there.
Thank you, Superintendent Thurmond. And thank you to all of you from across California for joining us today for the first of a number of weekly webinars we will be hosting to bring innovations and solutions directly to you in the field and into your homes. We really want to make sure that we're able to meet the needs of all of our students with disabilities in California. We know that there are many questions out there about special education in this new world of distance learning. Those of you who are working in and with districts, county offices, and charter schools have sent us hundreds of questions as you're trying to sort this all out. We've also heard from many parents and families who have questions and are really trying to support their children the best they can in the home with all of your support. Many of these are new questions for us as well at the department, and we want to be thoughtful in providing answers that are both immediate and helpful and considering the long-term impact to our state. We're here at CDE, and we will continue to update the special education guidance, our FAQ, and we understand the urgency as you continue to plan and implement how to discuss, deliver, and document what you're doing to serve our students with disabilities in some very new and innovative ways. On a personal note, my family is also struggling with the sudden changes in our daughter's schedule that is heavily reliant on in-person support to access this world. As we've been working as a state on increasing inclusion in our schools and in our communities, this temporary departure to a virtual world into our homes is extremely challenging. My husband and I, like other parents, are trying to move to acceptance of this situation and are working closely with our school team to maximize all opportunities we can for continued progress for our daughter and growth through this distance learning time. We're having to think more out of the box than ever, as many of you are. But that's what special educators and parents of kids with disabilities do. we think out of the box, and we have learned to be flexible. We're definitely being put to the test now and in the few months to come. Today's webinars focus less on the what and more on the how. We have a group of talented educators and administrators who are going to share how they have moved into action to meet the needs of students with disabilities and their families. You'll hear from a SELPA director of one of our most rural areas in California, the chief of special education of our largest school district, an RSP middle school teacher and CTA leader, a charter school leader and educator, and an early childhood administrator and an early childhood teacher, all working in unique ways to meet the needs of students with disabilities. So before I turn it to our first educator, I want to let you know again, this is the first of a series of webinars that we'll be hosting around a variety of topics around serving students with disabilities in a distance learning environment. We know there are many facets to special education. While due to the large numbers of participants in these webinars, and thank you to those who are also tuning in on Facebook Live, we will not be doing a Q&A, but you are always welcome to reach out to us through our email at sedinfo@cde.ca.gov. So I'm going to turn it over now to one of the places in California that we'll be hosting from today. Mindy, thank you for joining us from Humboldt, Del Norte County. Mindy?
Thank you, Superintendent Thurman, and for Kristen for this opportunity to be able to share what we're doing up in the far north region of California. We have 32 districts in our SELPA, comprised of 2 counties, Humboldt County Office of Ed and Del Norte County Office of Ed. We have about an 18% identification rate for students with disabilities, and we are one of the top counties in the state with the highest ACEs scores, which social emotional needs for students who are experiencing trauma. We are spread out over 5,200 square miles in my SELPA, so many one-room schoolhouse districts to larger districts. So today I'm going to take this opportunity to help share with you what we've been doing in the past couple weeks in trying to meet the needs of our families and supporting our community for students with disabilities. The first slide that you'll see here is our timeline of priorities. This is our 3rd week of school closures. Our spring breaks are later in April for all of our districts. So the first 2 weeks was our first priorities of school closure, and these were the directions and guidelines given. All service providers contacted their families on their caseloads. That means hopefully some families received multiple phone calls and multiple contacts via email or phone or however mode of communication we can get to those families, checking in on them. First and foremost, we had to determine the immediate needs of our family, and we weren't just focusing on education. Like many of you, especially in rural areas, our focus is on the health and safety of our families. Schools are a primary resource for them to get the support they need, both food, education, and social emotional needs. So it's very important that we check on them on a continuous basis. Our case carriers and our service providers partnered with general education staff to provide accommodations and any accessibility items that the students may need as we move further along in the school site closure period. Case carriers collaborated, again, with all service providers. All service providers contacted families and then reported back to case carriers on what the needs of the families were from their perspective as far as providing educational services. We do realize we have an equity issue. We're not going to say it's one size fits all, and we cannot provide the same level of services to our students and our families as if they were in our classroom. So that recognized we have to do a needs analysis, and that was our first 2 weeks. I have a guiding question document that service providers were given that can ask questions to families such as, do you know where the food drop-off is? Do you know where to meet the bus where the food drop-off is? Every district had a different way of providing food, and so proud of everyone that came together to make sure they had the resources that they need. The next thing we focused on was what are their technological capabilities, both in internet, laptops, computers, taking into account though that even though you may have a laptop and internet, not all students are able to access that. So it's really working with the families on what their needs, focusing on the students' abilities. We still do to this day have districts without internet, although we're giving free internet, many companies up here, but we have very remote areas that are on satellite that the connectivity just won't allow for Zoom. So we're trying to figure out the best way we can to reach those families. There are families without any connectivity right now. and they rely on cell phones and prepaid phone cards. So we are focusing, working with community partners on how to provide those prepaid phone cards so they can communicate with their staff and check in on their mental health well-being as well as their educational needs. Our case carriers in most of our districts did do IEP amendments the first 1 and 2 weeks of school closure. We documented services and accommodations and method of delivery. Everything from packets that are going to be delivered on the bus with the food pickup, or they can come to the school site to pick them up, from emails to phone calls to Zoom and Google Hangout platforms. Whatever the allowance and capability is for that individual family, that was noted and shared among all service providers. We also developed professional development Zoom trainings. As many of our staff, we haven't done distance learning. So we really didn't make sure that we support all of our staff in our districts so that they can access technology, so that they can provide the supports to their families. And we have ongoing professional development training to staff, including a variety of topics, social emotional supports during distance learning to academic supports, to also making sure we have trainings for our service providers on their mental health and their well-being. It's because we can only be we have to take care of ourselves before we can take care of others. Again, we're making a good faith effort for the families to provide appropriate access, ongoing communication, frequent communication with families to determine the level of support needed for both families, students, and staff. So if you can go on to the next slide, please. So as we move towards the next slide, is what we're doing now. This is week 3 of closures in all of our districts in the far north. We're moving towards distance learning plans. The distance learning plans is an ongoing tool to plan and document services, always with parent and family collaboration of the services that we can provide to families and students, both consult services and direct. Again, we're taking a point where the family can handle and what they can do right now. Some of those families, we're still trying to connect them with social emotional and focusing on their mental health needs, setting up schedules. Some families already have it dialed in and they're ready for that educational instruction to occur or to go further deeper into their educational needs. It's just all depending on individual conversations and frequent communication. We're focusing now on the distance learning plans on prioritizing goals and objectives, looking at already agreed upon goals and objectives from the students' IEPs from when school sites were in, and what goals can we realistically implement and instruct for our students and our families during this distance learning time. Not all goals can be addressed through distance learning. We recognize that, we understand that, and we do understand that services are going to need provided in some form of compensatory education. But we do want to focus on not what we can't do, but what we can do. And that's looking at what goals can be prioritized to help the family and to be able to support our students through distance learning. Why we're going to distance learning plans, even though we did amendments, because needs are changing rapidly in some of our families. They maybe didn't need the mental health support in week 2 or week 1. And now we're seeing, as this becomes a more reality and school sites may not open this school year, we're needing to provide more mental health support to students who may not have exhibited a need for it during the regular school year. So this distance learning plan gives us an opportunity to have that ongoing communication and to adjust it based on what the family's needs and also what the staff is feeling the student may require or may need going forward to more long-term plans. It is a guidance tool for my documents. It is not a mandate. It is a guidance tool and a planning tool for students and parents to use during this emergency time only. It is a way to capture what goals are being addressed, what method of service is being addressed, whether it's packets, whether it's phone calls, emails, or online platforms. And it's also a time to consult with the parents and to capture that consultation time. What we really like about it is that all service providers can see the distance learning plan, can identify goals in their respective areas, and also coordinate schedules. We know that a minute in a classroom is not the same as a minute in distance learning. We cannot do a 60-minute lesson in a special day class that we can do a 60-minute online. So we need to make those differentiations based on the student's ability, capabilities, and age levels. So the distance learning plan allows for that flexibility for documentation, always focusing on the skills that we can help the child progress in and achieve through the distance learning environment that we're in. The next thing also is that we're working on a resource bank. So if you have an IEP skill that is identified that your child is working on or your student is working on, then we'll have resources that follow along with that skill that either consult to the family or direct instruction to the student, giving their abilities and the needs. Again, I want to emphasize, we recognize that we will not be able to meet every student's needs as we physically can in our classrooms. We miss our students, we miss our families, and the first and foremost is focusing on their mental health needs right now, focusing on maintaining that connection as best as we can, given the limitations and restrictions that we have in technology particularly. But we have to support the family and the student wherever and however we can. We have to support our staff in being able to provide this new form of learning. And our role, especially up here in far northern rural California, but I'm sure it's shared otherwise, our role is far beyond an educational one. And we have to be able to make those connections with our family. So thank you for this opportunity to share what we're doing. I'm so proud of Del Norte and Humboldt County and the teachers and the administrators that we have. And I first and foremost want to focus on, we have to have communication, ongoing collaborative communication, and lastly, compassion. We're all in this together, and reach out, talk to your SELPA directors, find out who your SELPA director is. They're an amazing resource and an amazing support. And so again, I thank you for this opportunity, Superintendent Thurman and Kristen Wright. My contact info is there with my email. I please welcome any emails that people may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mindy. And one of the advantages, if there are advantages of virtual, is that we can go from Humboldt, Del Norte County, all the way to Los Angeles County in a matter of 3 seconds. And so we're going to head over to Los Angeles Unified and tune in to Tony Aguilar. Tony, are you there?
I'm here.
Excellent.
Thank you. Thank you, Superintendent, and thank you, Kristen Wright. Good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to share and discuss with you the work we're doing at LA Unified during this crisis. I do want to start off by echoing the words that was just shared by Mindy. The safety and well-being of our students and our staff are at the utmost here, and their mental health is also extremely important. And recognizing that this crisis has really caused a disruption to having our students every day in front of us and really making the impact that we all know we really need to make. Next slide, please. So I'm going to start off by talking about how we were working on addressing distance learning. So we looked at distance learning or at-home continuity of learning in a three-prong approach. Like many of the other districts in the state and in the nation, we quickly had to pivot to address the home learning opportunities during school closure. For us, it began on March 13th when it was announced the physical closure of our schools. Schools and teachers worked diligently to get learning material and packets ready for their students. This is what I term our low-tech approach. Simultaneously, LA Unified was able to secure a partnership with PBS, KCET, to broadcast instructional material for our students on our KLCS television station, which is what I deem our moderate approach or the over-the-air approach. For some students, they were able to receive a tablet or a computer for home use from their school of attendance. However, in an effort to ensure equity, we continue to process device distribution with the ultimate goal of making sure every single student is going to have a device available to them to be able to work from home. Next slide. Before I jump into the content of this slide, I want to share that it's been in collaboration with the Division of Instruction in our own district in providing professional development to teachers to help them learn about our district adopted platforms such as Schoology and Edgenuity, and tools available to them such as Zoom conferencing to deliver instructional content during this time. As Mindy shared, many of our practitioners also had not experienced these tools. It's different when you're moving from the classroom setting to a virtual setting. So what we were really hearing from our staff was that they needed to get an understanding or help them frame what a day would really look like and the options that were available to them to deliver content. So as a result, we created some guidance, and I captured some highlights in the next slides. For all teachers, we asked that they maintain regular hours to help them schedule office hours, collaboration time, and instructional interactions with their students as close as possible to their students' IEP. We also asked them to log the interactions with students as a way to ensure that we're reaching all students. Some of the delivery options that we included here is email, phone calls, teleconferencing, Zoom conferencing, and small group sessions. Again, these are options, recognizing that some work better for other students, and also the accessibility that some of the other homes have as well. Next slide, please. For our teachers in the alternate curriculum, we provided similar guidance as they worked alongside with our core teachers for professional development. With them, it was very similar with our service options of phone calls, emails, and video conferencing. However, we are fortunate that we have a district adopted alternate curriculum known as Unique Learning System that we were able to transition to online for our students in the alt curriculum. Next slide. Lastly, we provided guidance to our related service providers. We asked that they too maintain regular work hours to be available for our students. Our related service providers are making the initial contacts with families through phone calls to be able to address the unique needs of every student. And as was mentioned before, 60 minutes of time in a classroom setting is really difficult to deliver in a virtual setting. So our service providers are very keen on connecting with the parents and families and students to identify the right amount of work and the right amount of time that they can do to have a virtual learning environment. This environment could be in an array of different ways, again, through Zoom conferencing, video teleconferencing, phone calls, and small group sessions. Again, we're asking that they log in and support, they log in all these interactions so that we can identify the gaps and where stronger connections are going to be needed for our students. What is important to note is that we need to be able to select from various options for supporting our students, because we recognize the challenge of the digital divide and truly that equity issue that all of us deal with. And even as again, having a device oftentimes may not mean that you have accessibility or connectivity to be able to access some of the content. So at LA Unified, we're committed to continue with the three-prong approach of whether it's going to be that low-tech paper PDF or instructional content that's delivered over broadcasting, or devices to deliver instructional content to meet the unique needs of each student. We're going to continue. And really the goal of all providers is to make sure that we're offering access and supports to be able to maximize the most we can during this time. Next slide. So thank you for allowing me to share and recognizing the limited amount of time. I did include my email, so you please feel free to reach out to me. I do also want to share with you our newly formatted or reformatted at-home learning resource page that was created that is available for you to access. And again, thank you, Superintendent, and thank you, Kristen Wright, for this opportunity.
Thank you, Tony. So we're going to head from Los Angeles and head over to the Bay Area to Robbie Kreitz, who is RSP middle school teacher. Robbie, are you there?
I'm here now.
All right, there's Robbie.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for allowing me to be here, and thank you, Kristen, Superintendent Thurman. I'm coming from the perspective of a classroom teacher and a teacher leader across the state, and I want to bring the voice of the teacher to this conversation. One thing I will say that has been a change is that this happened overnight, and I think the work we're doing and how far we've come in 2 weeks is pretty impressive. Working with teachers across the state, there's been an effort in collaboration with the State Department of Ed, and through part of my job, be working through CTA, is to build resources and tools for our special ed providers or general ed providers and make them accessible to anyone who needs them, the rural end of the state to the locals in the large urban areas. And I think that's been really amazing to see how that's come to fruition over the past 2 weeks. And if we can go to the next slide, please. So I work in Dublin Unified School District in the East Bay, and I will say that on a Monday, March 9th, all of our teachers here in Dublin were asked to make 2 weeks of lesson plans for a quarantine. We were preparing for what if a school had to close, and what would we do for 2 weeks for our students. And by Friday, March 13th at 12 o'clock, we were preparing for schools to be closed until April 13th. So the flip of in a 4-day period, our lives changed. And what that meant is that we needed to change how we were going to approach this. And I think some of my colleagues on the panel have already spoken to this, but our collaboration between the district and myself and the teachers has been amazing, and communication and collaboration have been the key to how far we've gotten. So what I've created is kind of how we've divided the work over the past couple of weeks into case management, and making sure that initially, as the teachers and the students transition to this, that there is connections with students and parents, that the caseload manager has made connections to the students and the parents to ensure that you're still here, that schools are still around, that your students not lost in this process. And ensuring that special ed supports will be in there available to your child as we transition to distance learning. And being that distance learning is something that is so heavily impacted by computer access, do these kids have access to a computer at home? Do they have a tool? And through our district, we've been able to work collaboratively to get the computers in the hands of kids as fast as possible. In a district with 12,000 students, I think in 2 weeks they've given out over 725 computers, and that has been amazing. And making sure that they have access to hotspots as well. As a case manager, we've been asked to document, do you have access, do you not? And I think somebody shared that earlier up in Humboldt County, that they were doing something similar. Do you have access? Can we get it to you? Can you get it through the means that we have available? And then also looking to see what procedures and policies we have for IEP compliance. Every district is developing a distance learning plan, and within the plan there needs to be special ed provisions. So working collaboratively, our district has set up job-alike group collaborative conversations so that people can voice the needs of their various, be it mild, moderate, I'm from a resource perspective, and what the resource teachers might need to ensure that their students have access to the distance learning that's going to be implemented across the district. Next slide, please. From a teacher's perspective, for daily practice, it is so important to keep a daily service log. It's almost like we're keeping a dear diary. And I think people were doing it before it came out as one of the best practices. What communication methods, what are you doing with to engage your children? What tools are you using? Creating service hours, creating office hours that allow for student connection in accordance with IEP services delineated on the signed documents. Connecting with WebEx. I think that there is an influx of need for Zoom across the state, and I think we're using this immensely in a lot of our different meetings and student contacts, and I think it's been very beneficial for me as a teacher. I've been able to access it with my kids. And then IEP meetings. Our to-do list as a special ed teacher is growing. And an IEP meeting, how do we do this? How do we do this when we sit across the table in 3D to sit across a computer for a family who might not understand the process? That is the most overwhelming thing that I think I've been hearing from my colleagues, from myself, is what are these virtual meetings going to look like? And really by making those connections in the very beginning, you've been able to build that trust that we can start having the meetings so parents can see that it's not business as usual, but it's still business in support of the student and keeping the student at the center of everything. So through the communication with our district office, we are establishing protocols for how do you sign a meeting? How do you sign it? What kind of supports are there for signing meeting documents? I've included one of the things that was recommended from a colleague was DocuSign. And there are also different tools that are available, but DocuSign seems to be offering trial memberships that are user for all of us. And then walking the parents through the meeting prior so that it's not so overwhelming where you're doing this on a computer screen with multiple faces. Next slide, please. It doesn't end with best practices that have come up in the past 2.5 weeks. We still have to figure out what is going to happen with, do we need meetings for addendums to transition during this short period? Now that it's through the end of the school year, we probably have a little more finite answer on that. What happens with ESY? What is ESY going to be? Is it going to be distance learning? Is it going to be distance learning based on the time that we've seen here? Attendance. Are we marking attendance? Are we not marking attendance? Those are questions that seem to be coming from parents. Do you need me to prove that I'm going to be there? I appreciate the honesty from the parents' questions that I've received. And they're really, through collaboration, it's been pretty amazing to see that they're genuinely concerned about their student and willing to work with us when the communication lines are open. How do you complete a triennial assessment? What are we doing to ensure that we can keep those going so we're not inundated in August when we return, knock on wood? And what kind of procedures and protocols can we put in place to make sure that these students get the right services for these triennials or initial evaluations? While it's been 2.5 weeks in Dublin that we've been on this journey, In 2.5 weeks, we've established a lot of protocols and procedures and parameters of which people are doing their jobs. And it seems to parallel a lot of the neighboring districts and colleagues across the state that I've been in collaboration with, which makes me really excited to see. But I think if we continue the collaboration and communication, we don't all have to reinvent the wheel in isolation. We can work together to keep us moving forward. I appreciate the time, and I'm sorry if I spoke too fast, and I look forward to the next speaker. Thank you.
Robbie, thank you so much for joining us. We're going to now head over to Los Angeles again to Shauna Draxton from Wish Academy. Shauna?
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Superintendent Thurmond, and thank you, Kristen Wright. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here and to collaborate with everyone and to be a part of this. This is an unprecedented time, and we've worked really hard as a school team to try to do our very best in serving kids during distance learning, like my colleagues have mentioned. Academically, we very much want to support children, but socially and emotionally, we want to be available and present and make sure that their last few months of this school year, they're responded to and supported, as well as our teachers, as well as our parents. So, next slide. When we found out that we were going to move to distance learning, it was before the school closure. We looked at our learning management system, Canvas, and learned that the Big Blue Button system that was in Canvas allowed for synchronous learning with our teachers through conference style sessions. So prior to formally closing our facility, the teachers had training for an afternoon, and then they practiced for 2 days with their own students. And then we did a pupil free day for their planning. And then the following week, we went into our distance learning program. In collaboration with our parents and our teachers and our specialists and our understanding of our students, we decided to do synchronous learning in the morning. It's different for each span of students. We serve elementary, middle, as well as high school students. Every single afternoon, we committed to doing office hours, and that has allowed us to provide dedicated one-to-one service provision, group extensions and interventions, counseling services, clubs, and culture building activities. At Wish, our mission is inclusivity for social justice and a whole scholar approach to education, which means we really want art and music and PE as well as co-teaching to continue to occur during their school day, and we're attempting to do those things during distance learning as well. We have a very diverse population, but I should mention that in terms of ability level, we have students with more significant needs in every one of our classrooms. We're committed to that. We believe in that. And so we've worked really hard to make sure they have equitable service provision during this time as well. Next slide, please. All of our service providers continued as best as possible with their same schedule in the morning during that synchronous learning. They reduced their minutes to meet what was being done in classrooms. All of our service providers contacted families to talk about what the service provision would look like. So they could make sure they were really understanding how students were going to have their academic and social emotional needs met. Our practitioners are documenting their service on an internal contact and service log. And we do have some paraprofessionals working through Zoom under the supervision of special ed teachers and general ed teachers in those Canvas Big Blue Button breakout sessions as well as classroom sessions. All of our teachers are using Canvas, and our special ed teachers and DIS professionals are going in and providing in-class private prompts to students, as well as working in breakout rooms to provide service during the synchronous learning time of the day. During the office hours time of the day, we have folks doing all kinds of work from, one-to-one Zoom sessions that range from 15 minutes to 30 minutes. We've really tried to understand what IEPs currently say and work with parents and collaborate to find ways to meaningfully and engage all of our students. So I have a few examples here. We have one of our practitioners is doing small group socialization because that's one of the students' goals, and she's doing a small group in Zoom, and they're doing Pictionary. We have another one of our practitioners working on a goal of 3 step directions, and they're doing Zoom sessions that are short. And instead of doing a 3-step direction in the classroom, the parent asked us if we would help and support the child to do sorting of laundry and then doing a load of laundry through a propped up iPad on the kitchen table. So we've attempted to provide support in that way, in that manner for that child. We have other, folks working on first then directions with a modified worksheet that's been sent home, and the special ed teacher is prompting the student through the worksheet, and they're having a discussion and providing service. We've really relied heavily on phone calls also to make sure that parents are heard and listened to and responded to, and that we're making adjustments to our program in real time. It just as this is new for all of the folks we serve, it's new for the parents, and they are carrying a heavy load trying to figure out how to support their child at home, and we really want to be good partners. Our special education teachers are calling families and asking them the questions on a form that was designed by Amy Henry called the Family Support Plan during distance learning. And it has some very pointed questions on what do you hope to get out of this distance learning experience? What do you hope to get from your occupational therapist during this time? How can we best serve you? What do you expect to get from your language and speech therapist? How can I better serve you as a special ed teacher? And so on. Next slide, please. We have continued with our mental health counseling for students who have that in their IEPs. Immediately, we drafted a contract and a permission form so that that service provision could continue, and that's happening through Zoom sessions. We also have academic counseling happening for some of our students who need that additional support, although it's available to all families who request it. And then we have general ed and special ed teachers also supporting students with their social emotional needs, as well as their academic needs through conferencing. New slide, please. As an inclusive school, we immediately put those services and supports into the day so that the teachers can continue to co-teach and the specialty therapists can continue to provide their service. But as we have continued through this, we have personalized programs for students based on conversations with families. We have modifications and accommodations applied to the general education coursework. We have additional services and supports provided during those office hours, and we have a highly individualized plan that's been developed with each family. We do have some families whose children have significant support needs, and whereas all students have technology and all students have internet access, they have asked to not participate in synchronous learning like that and to instead use an alternative curriculum packet, just as we would give a general ed student an independent study packet to align with distance learning if that's what they would prefer. And so with that in mind, we have designed hybrid programs with our synchronous learning in the morning and then some of the alternative study packet in the afternoon or throughout the day. And we're just really trying to be flexible and supportive to families based on what they need. Again, we're setting up 15 to 30-minute long sessions to provide services that are identified in students' IEPs, and those services are being designed around goals and in constant collaboration with families. New slide, please. We are continuing to conduct IEPs. We're doing it through Google Hangout and Zoom. All service providers attend IEP. We have an IEP manager, and that person reaches out to families before the IEP occurs and practices with them on Zoom, because it's really intimidating for us to use Zoom, but it's also very intimidating for families. So our manager works with them so that they're comfortable, they know how to mute and unmute themselves and participate fully. The administrator leads with the required statements and explains parents' rights and facilitates the meeting. We do describe how we provide supports during COVID-19 and how we will continue with services during this time. New slide, please. And then just some additional supports for all. We've really had to support our teachers in optimizing their technology at home, and we've provided some expertise around that in talking about their internet service with their providers. We've provided some tools and also some monetary supports to upgrade and optimize their systems. We have a materials and supplies Google form, and parents are putting all kinds of things in there, from an adaptive chair that they want brought to their house to a checklist, a behavior checklist that worked well in the class that they want at home. Whatever tools parents are asking for, we're mailing them if we can, or we have one person who makes arrangements for parents to either pick up or a drop-off point that's safe using safe distancing. We also have a tech support line that all of our folks are using. We found that even though we do have Chromebooks and access, there's a lot more to having an effective distance learning, synchronous learning system, and that people need a lot of conversations about how this works. And so we've provided real-time immediate access for teachers and for parents and for students and administrators so that they can be effective in their practice as we all work through this. I think that's it. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to share about what we're doing, and I really appreciate the opportunity to collaborate with all of you.
Thank you, Shauna. And we are going to head back to Humboldt-Del Norte County to Eureka, where we have Heather and then Lindsay joining us to talk about early childhood and providing services for our students with disabilities who are in early learning. Heather?
Hey, everyone. I just want to take the opportunity really quickly on behalf of Lindsay and myself and Eureka City Schools and our preschool program to thank you very much for having us here. We'll go ahead and start with that first slide. So earlier, Mindy gave an overview of how the Humboldt-Del Norte SELPA is working to continue serving children and families in our far northern California area. And now Lindsay and I are going to share how, along with the rest of our districts and under the Humboldt-Del Norte SELPA, Eureka City Schools preschool program, which is also a current Supporting Inclusive Practices grantee, is providing comprehensive services using a virtual model. Our main campus, Winslow Children's Center, is an inclusive California state preschool program serving a high at-risk population. Children with IEPs receive individualized intensive instruction in the general education setting, and speech and language services are also provided on site. Because we operate under our area's largest school district, we have access and connections to district services, such as the free and reduced meal program, which is serving thousands of children in our community to this day, mental health services, district family resource center, BCBAs, and school psychologists who are all still dedicated to being there for our students during this time. One of the things I want to emphasize is how important it is to value the shared responsibility for all of our students across all staff roles. Our general education and special education professionals work closely to fulfill the social, emotional, and educational goals of each of their students. And even though our preschool support staff aren't necessarily designated as special education, all staff are really special educators. So one of the things that we're doing is encouraging staff who may not be making direct contact with students and families at this time to pursue virtual professional development opportunities to grow their skills in inclusive practices and supporting students across the developmental continuum. As we've transitioned to a virtual platform, we understand the communication pathways that we're using have to work for everyone involved, and that means being pretty creative sometimes. For example, in the last IEP I attended virtually, the case carrier had a weak internet connection from her home somewhere up here in this rural area, and it affected the audio and video quality of the meeting. The parent could only join by phone, and I ended up keeping up with the meeting by refreshing the notes being kept in a shared Google Doc. It's just a testament to how hard our area agencies are working together to continue providing essential services and support to all students in our area, including our youngest learners and their families. In addition to the distance learning and enrichment opportunities offered to all of our preschool students, our special education teacher has also initiated amendments and offered ongoing consultation services with families to continue progress on IEP goals in ways that are appropriate for the child in the home setting. So now we'll go to the next slide, and I'll hand it over to teacher Lindsay, who will give us an even more in-depth view of how our teachers continue to provide high quality early learning opportunities for all using a distance learning model.
Did we lose Lindsay?
I'm here.
Oh, great.
Okay, great. I didn't know my picture wasn't up, so I didn't see. But hi, everybody. My name is Lindsay Sanchi, and I'm an early childhood education teacher for Eureka City Schools. And so first of all, in organizing and planning our model of distance learning, we first wanted to recognize that our core values for support include being family guided and utilize the power of play and daily routines as the context in which children learn. Before we can even consider methods, we must first consider mindset. So do families feel safe? Do families feel supported? Do families feel secure? When we ensure families have their basic needs met and are mentally and physically well, only then can we focus on interventions or target goals. Human connection and true support of family is invaluable. Through a minimum of a once weekly check-in and conversations with families, we can assess how they're doing and how we can best support them. Families of students that carry IEPs or families that have specific needs get follow-up conversations throughout the week from service providers and community partners. All conversations, contacts, and attempted contacts are logged on a team shared spreadsheet and reviewed by team members throughout the week. The importance of team collaboration and communication is monumental in this unprecedented time. Without true collaboration between all general education teachers, special education teachers, service providers, and families, our team would not be strong. All of our teachers meet virtually at the beginning of the week to discuss our team's weekly goals and plans and individual children and families' specific needs and goals. Together, we collaborate on how we can meet them, and then we delegate tasks. Our focus is on forming practices that support a strong home-to-school connection and partnership versus just trying to turn parents into teachers and service providers to do school at home. We want to focus on progress rather than compliance. All of our teachers collaborate to create a document through Google Docs using the California Preschool Learning Foundations and curriculum frameworks, and we embed accommodations for inclusion and our English language learners. We provide meaningful ideas and support strategies that address each of the learning foundations that families can embed easily into their daily routines at home. All of our meaningful ideas and support strategies are created with considerations for children who have diverse abilities, and they're all play-based. All of our curriculum focuses on things that families already have access to at home, so it makes our distance learning accessible for everybody. Our materials are delivered in the student's home language electronically by mail or dropped off at their place of residence if necessary. Some other ways that we're connecting with families include use of our school and district Facebook page, use of access radio and TV, district robo-dial messages, and this Friday we're beginning a weekly Zoom meeting so that we can engage students and families in a virtual group setting with familiar activities that the children are used to, such as music, puppetry, and stories. We're all in this together to ensure access and equality for all. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, Lindsay. And thank you to all of our educators, both the ones who tuned in with us today to share their practices and innovations and commitment to our students and our parents and our families. I think we saw a through line there around parents and families and teachers and administrators all working together to try to make this happen in California. I am completely in awe of all of them and all of you who are out there trying to do this good work. I would like to thank you again, our presenters, for taking this time. I know it's not easy to get to come online in your living room to 5,000 of your closest friends. And we truly do know this is an all hands on deck effort, and we're seeing that in the responses we're getting from you across the state and just the fact that 7,000 or 8,000 people are tuned in right now. I would be remiss if I didn't mention that today is World Autism Day, and I've heard directly from some of my friends and read many posts and messages about the loneliness and despair many of our individuals with autism and other developmental disabilities are feeling out there. during this time of COVID-19. And so as a way to say adieu for today, and know that we have more webinars planned each week for you, so please come back and join us. It'll be in a similar format where we will be talking to the educators that are doing the work, and then we'll be sharing out to you. We'll be sharing this set of PowerPoint slides and contact information, as well as a lot of the resources that they spoke about. We'll continue to be posting those, as well as additional guidance. But I'd like to ask everyone, as we sort of close out today, to make an extra effort and intention about setting up a chat or some regular check-ins, not just with your family, but with your neighbors and friends, and a special attention to our folks that may not be able or may not reach out to you directly, but really do need that support, that are in their homes, sheltering in place. So that Google or FaceTime or Zoom that you could set up with them would mean a great deal. And so again, thank you, California, for all the work you're doing to work together on this. And we know this is not easy. I personally know, we all know, as parents and families working here at the CDE as well, we're all trying to do double duty. And so we appreciate all of your attention to working together on this education issue. And please tune back in next week. We will be sending out information on the webinars. We will be posting that on our website. We will be putting up additional guidance through our FAQs on the COVID-19 website as that comes available, so keep an eye out for that. And thank you again. Good night. Good day.